And joining us now is Democratic Congressman James WalkinShaw of Virginia. He sits on the House Oversight and Homeland Security Committee. Congressman, it's great to have you back on the show. Before we get into the big business this week on the Hill, I do want to get your reaction to what we saw last night at the White House Correspondents' Dinner, the attack there. As a member of the Homeland Security Committee, how alarmed are you that somebody was able to get that close to so many senior members of the U.S. government and high-profile guests?
It's shocking. And, first, I'm just deeply, deeply grateful that no one, the president, cabinet members, members of Congress, members of the press there, no one there was seriously injured. But we absolutely have to understand how somebody armed to the teeth in the way that this guy could have gotten so close to the ballroom where the president and others were. I'm going to be listening very carefully for the Secret Service's explanation and, if necessary, pushing for an investigation either from the Homeland Security Committee or Oversight Committee in terms of how this could have happened.
Let's move on to the latest in the Epstein files ongoing SAGA. Your committee is going to hear from Gateway founder Ted Waitt this Wednesday. He's the former boyfriend of Ghislaine Maxwell. What do you think you can learn from him that you haven't already learned from another witness? What insight is it that you're seeking from him?
Well, first, my fundamental questions for anybody in the Epstein-Maxwell orbit is what did you know and when did you know it? And Maxwell and Waitt dated by most accounts from 2003 to 2010. I want to know whether Maxwell ever discussed with him the crimes that she and Epstein had committed, or was he, as others have claimed, completely oblivious to that life that Maxwell led. There are some strange emails in the files referencing someone potentially trying to blackmail Ted Waitt because of his relationship with Maxwell. There's emails between Maxwell and Epstein to that effect. I'd like to understand exactly what was going on there, what the context of that was. But at the end of the day, we want to try to figure out who else knew about these crimes that Maxwell and Epstein had committed.
Congressman, Donald Trump's Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick testified recently about about his relationship with Epstein and whatnot, or at least he was asked to testify about that. Let's play what happened.
American people wants to know, why did you lie about your relationship with Epstein?
The House Oversight Committee and I have agreed
we will
the spend the time
reclaiming
together.
My time. Please answer the question. Why did you lie to the Post?
I have voluntarily agreed to spend the time and talk about it.
I reclaim the time. Let the record reflect you're dodging the question.
So it seems like so far lawmakers have not been able to get accountability or explanations on this. What more can you do at this point to get to the truth about Secretary Lutnick's relationship with Epstein and why he at least appears to have misled people about the extent of that relationship and how recently it continued or concluded?
Howard Lutnick will be coming before the Oversight Committee, and I promise you he will be asked precisely that question. There is no doubt, there is no question that Lutnick lied to the American people in an interview where he said explicitly he never was on Epstein's island. I don't know how you forget visiting a private island. That's not something I would forget if I had done it. We learned, of course, later that he did visit Epstein's island, and the relationship was more in-depth than he told the American people. This is a member of President Trump's cabinet who has lied to the American people about his relationship with Epstein. It's a pattern with Donald Trump and people close to him. They continue to lie about their relationship with Jeffrey Epstein. We're going to ask him those questions under oath so we can learn once and for all to what extent did Howard Lutnick and Jeffrey Epstein have a relationship?
Let me ask you one more, if I can, about another potential witness. That is Tova Knoll, who's expected to testify, I believe, or be interviewed on May 18th. She's, of course, one of the federal correctional officers who was on duty in the jail or at the jail where Epstein killed himself. There's been a lot of questions around some cash transactions that have been reported by the Miami Herald that have raised serious questions. Apparently, Knoll made multiple deposits into her bank account beginning in 2018, including a $5,000 deposit made 10 days before Epstein's death. That transaction was flagged in a bank's suspicious activity report. A, is that concerning to you? And B, how do you get to the bottom of it? What's the plan to find out why these transactions were being made, and more importantly, whether or not she may have known anything about Epstein's death?
Well, the Miami Herald also reported very explicitly, based on sources inside the prison, that Epstein was paying protection payments to prison guards and personnel there at the prison. Obviously, that raises a serious question about those deposits that Tova Knoll made. We're going to be asking those questions. She'll be answering those questions under oath. And in terms of how do we get to the bottom of it, the responses that she gives us will be compared to responses that she and others who work for the prison gave in the IG investigations that have taken place. And we'll consider calling other folks who work in the prison to answer questions as well. So if someone lies to us, we will figure out who's lying. They're under oath before Congress. Lying will be a serious issue if they were to do it.
Congressman James Walkinshaw, thank you.
Thank you.
And ahead, the new details we're learning about the suspected attacker from the White House Correspondents' Dinner. We'll be joined by someone who was staying in the hotel room next to where the suspect was at the Washington Hilton. You're watching the Weekend Primetime on MSNOW.